I'm Claire Chandler. I'm the president and founder of Talent Boost and the creator of a framework called Growth on Purpose. And I help organizations grow through their people, not in spite of them. I founded my company, Talent Boost, in 2013. But before that, I spent about 20 years within the walls of corporate America. And I'll share a quick story. One day when I was a full-time corporate employee, my boss stopped me in the hall and he said, "Claire, you need to tone down your walk." And I said something to the effect of, "What now?" And he goes, your walk, it's too bouncy, it's too happy, and people are going to start to think that you're up to something, like you know something they don't." I politely thanked him for those pearls of wisdom, went back to my desk and went to the next item on my to-do list. And spoiler alert, I didn't alter my walk. I didn't do any of that. But in hindsight, that exchange really became emblematic for me of corporate culture done wrong. This is the type of leader, and I'll use air quotes when I describe him as a leader, who would say such gems as "do as I say, not as I do." It was that type of an exchange that was not a one-off, but was unfortunately pretty common in that environment that ultimately led me to leave the comfortable cocoon of corporate America and start my own business. Talent Boost is a business advisory. We help companies achieve growth through the strength of their people. We've been blessed and honored to walk alongside of our clients as they have achieved transformational growth. We've helped clients double their market share, quadruple their employee engagement, increase revenue by 600%. We follow our signature methodology, which is called Growth on Purpose. That's designed to help organizations like yours attract, retain, engage, and advance the right talent so you can knock your growth strategy out of the park. And so I want to do a quick gut check. When growth stalls in your organization or maybe in your past organization, what's typically been the blame? Was it the strategy? Was it the structure? Or was it the people misalignment? I want to dispel a myth for everyone. Growth rarely stalls because your strategy is bad. It typically stalls because we're under leveraging our people. Most companies say people are our greatest asset, but they don't tend to get the most out of those people. And we also know that when organizations grow faster than their talent can adapt, that's when these people strategies fail. And that's understandable, right? Because with growth comes complexity. I say to my clients all the time, if we were employing robots, this would be a lot easier, right? But we're not. We're employing human beings who all perform and behave differently. They bring with them a unique set of skills and experiences and perspectives and values and ideas and behavior and drama, and the list goes on. And it can get overwhelming. And that overwhelm causes us to take longer to act than is typically necessary. And the reality is, the longer we take to act, to attract and retain and engage and advance the right people, the more likely the wrong talent is going to stick around and overtake the right ones. And in fact, Bain & Company found that 92% of companies underperform, not because the strategy is bad, not because the structure is misaligned, but because they delay a decision related to talent. Whether it's a delay in hiring talent, in addressing performance. How many of you know leaders who say, well, it's still their first 90 days, we're in the honeymoon period, let's give them an opportunity to self-correct? And they delay a decision that could have made the difference. And so I always find this statistic to be really astounding. And the more you think about it, it is completely true that most companies do underperform when they wait too long to make a decision that they know in their hearts is the right one in addressing talent. The bottom line is this: without the right people in the right roles, with the right skills and motivations, your business will not grow, full stop. And in fact, it's ultimately going to die off if we don't have those right people in the right roles. But I've been doing this for a while. I was in corporate America for about 20 years. I'm going on to 12 years as a business owner. And one of the things that I've learned is we tend to overcomplicate and overthink this whole people thing. And it is one of the reasons that we tend to spin a lot in our own heads before we make a decision related to talent. So today's session is all about breaking this down and making it much, much simpler. This is not about adding more to your plate. This is about realigning what you already have, taking advantage of the data that you already have access to, and strengthening the alignment of all of that so that growth comes faster and faster and in a much easier way. And so I'm going to share with you the 4 fundamental needs that every single employee has. And I'm also going to share some insights from our growth on purpose assessments. So let's jump in. So no matter the role, no matter the seniority, no matter the level in your hierarchy, every single employee in your organization needs these 4 basic needs to be met. They need a reason to believe. They need a place to belong. Need the space to break stuff. Don't get nervous. I'll explain that later. And they need a future that they can buy into and build. And when any one of those needs goes unmet, performance suffers. But when you fulfill all 4, your people stop resisting change and they start driving it. All 4 of these have to be in place. You personally and all of the employees in your organization have to feel like these needs are met before they're going to really drive effective, positive change and accelerate your growth strategy. Each of those needs aligns with one of the 4 pillars of our framework and our signature methodology around growth on purpose. So I want to walk you through these 4 pillars and show you some easy ways that you can either implement that pillar if it's missing, or strengthen that pillar if it's just not firing on all cylinders. So we'll talk about the first pillar, which is aspiration. When you don't have this one in place, some of the symptoms of that are what I would call low attraction. You're struggling to find the right talent in the first place to join your team. When people don't believe in your organization's purpose, when they're just not buying what you're selling, and when they hear through others that your actual culture doesn't deliver what your employer brand promises, they don't apply. They don't show up for interviews. They don't show up on day 1. They bail out halfway through the onboarding process. If I asked 10 employees in your world what your organization's purpose is, how many different answers would I get? You're not alone. Most organizations struggle with this. And again, this is fundamental. And there's a cost to this. When we look at the cost of not having an aspirational pillar that's really strong, we know that wrong fit hires end up costing your organization somewhere around 30% of their overall annualized salary. And where do we get that number? Well, it's a combination of their underperformance, their maybe misaligned behavior, the progressive discipline that starts a little bit farther down the line, because again, when we delay correcting their behavior from the very first red flag, it builds up, it doesn't resolve itself. And then when we layer that next to the data that we're collecting through our growth on purpose assessment, we're also finding that one of the things that's feeding into this cost is the fact that 62% of companies surveyed do not have a compelling employer value proposition. So they don't have a well-crafted, well-defined, consistently understood brand promise that lures and attracts the right candidates through your door and then honors that commitment to them once they start. And only 50% of companies actually understand why people join their ranks. These are astounding numbers, but when you break them down, you start to understand why this pillar is so important. And so it is super important to give candidates a reason to believe by doing things that strengthen this aspiration clarity pillar. We need to answer the question of potential candidates, why they should join in the first place. What is that reason to believe? One of the ways that we do this with our clients is to help them build out what we call a message map. This is a great one-pager that helps you define your talent value proposition and then align it to what will resonate the most with each key stakeholder audience, whether that's your internal employees who become brand ambassadors, prospective clients, hiring managers, etc. It's really important to use a tool such as this to make sure that your messages are aligned, your leaders are consistent, and all of your employees are singing from the same songbook. But again, this is not about adding to your plate. It's about looking for ways that you can do this in an easier way. So I want to equip you as we go through each of these pillars with some powerful questions you can start to sprinkle into the conversations you're already having. These are great, powerful questions that will enable you to mine the data from the workforce you already have. What do you wish more employees and candidates knew about our company? What do you like best about working here? Why does our company exist? Why are we in business? What are we here to accomplish? And how does our company make a difference? But think about it. When's the last time anyone has asked you those questions? When's the last time you asked your people those questions? You might be surprised by the answers that you get. So these are just some sample questions that you can start to ask to get that data, to look for trends and patterns, and to start to beef up your aspiration pillar to give the right talent a reason to believe, a reason to join. Okay, so now let's jump into pillar 2, which is awareness. When you don't have the awareness pillar in place, you typically suffer from low retentions. Most of you would track this as your turnover rate. Every time a new client comes into my world, this is typically the pain point that they complain about. They say, we keep losing our best talent. They're leaving faster than we can replace them. This is where the right talent isn't staying. The reason for that is they don't feel like this is a place where they fit in. They don't feel like this is a role or this is a community where they can do their best work, where what you are paying them to do while market competitive is in alignment with what makes them feel productive and fulfilled. You see this where you've got this incredibly talented member of your team, but they're just not crushing their role. So maybe they're not in the right position. This is the kind of misalignment that you start to see. And it's the sort of red flag that if it goes unchecked, and if you don't make that decision early enough to realign their job to fit with what their natural talents are, they start to pull back, they start to go quiet, and then ultimately they leave. And so there's a cost to this too. We know from SHRM and other places that it costs up to twice a person's salary, especially higher ranking leaders, every time we lose them. That's everything from the time and cost to fill the position, the dips in productivity and morale with the rest of the team that you have to overcompensate and cover for them and do their work. So all of these costs start to add up. And when we look at the data from the Growth on Purpose assessment, what we find is that 83% of companies do not have a succession plan for every one of their key position holders. In a lot of cases, they don't have succession plans at all. 71% of employees in those organizations can't clearly see a career path for themselves. Most companies that I talk to do exit surveys and exit interviews. And one of the number one reasons that people say they're leaving is because they don't have a clear career path. And yet we have all of this data, but we're not actually doing enough with it to stem the tide. So it's really important with this pillar that we address this place to belong fundamental need that all employees have. This is a succession plan we use. We have a one-page format because, again, along the theme of we tend to overthink and overcomplicate some of these first steps. A succession plan on its own does not have to be so complicated, and yet most organizations, as we saw in our own survey data, they just don't do it. And so when we work with clients, we help them to put together succession plans. And then we also take their existing talent, their A players, and we map, the unique DNA that makes them so special. What differentiates them, not just in performance, but in behavior. What's that X factor? What are the things that they do that other employees don't? What do they get that their counterparts lack? And so when we use that data plus the succession planning tools, we can really help them to replicate their best talent. But again, this is not about adding more tools and more programs to your plate. Here are some questions that you can start to ask people in your organization and in your world right now by repurposing the conversations you're already having. Asking them what their natural talents or strengths are, why they're motivated to use them, how they prefer to use them, how they prefer to communicate. It's interesting. It's such a basic common sense question. And so rarely do I see leaders asking their employees how they prefer to get information, give information, what are their turnoffs and must-haves in an interaction with other people, what gets them to lean in versus mentally leave a conversation. It's really important to understand that. Assessment tools, by the way, are a really great way to capture some of this. And it's one of the things that we lean on heavily when we're capturing the DNA of A players. But these are questions you can start to just, integrate into the conversations you have with your people right away. Okay, so moving on to pillar 3, this is acceleration. This is when we start to gain some real momentum here, because when you don't have this third pillar in place, what ends up happening is you start to see low engagement. Most companies that we work with do survey their employees, and they're really proud of their engagement rate. And then I throw a curveball to them and I say, what's your real engagement rate? And they're like, what do you mean? And I say, I want you to take your engagement rate, the percentage of engagement you have, whether it's 70% or 60% or 90%, and multiply it by your participation rate. And then they go quiet. They go, ooh, right, okay. So we only had like 50% of people participate. So when you use that as a variable or as a multiplier, you really start to break down how many people took the time to tell you how they felt. When you're looking at organizations that have low engagement, this is this state in your organization where the right talent, they're just not contributing like they used to. They're not going above and beyond. They're not speaking up in meetings. They're not collaborating with other people on the team. And one of the ways that that shows up is trust, right? Or lack thereof, either trust of their teammates or trust of their leaders. Now, when we talk about these 4 fundamental needs of employees, trust is table stakes in a culture that is positive and that is strong. Because when trust is broken, it is nearly impossible to replace, and it takes a long time to build. And so this pillar is all about trying to build up trust, not manufacture it, but build it and nurture it and honor it and make sure that you continue to earn it every single day. Because there's a cost to this too. When you look at the cost of disengagement, we know from SHRM and from other sources that disengagement not only decreases productivity by 18%, but companies that have active disengagement or really low engagement scores also see their profitability being lower by almost a quarter. You also see this show up in an increase in the volume and severity of employee relations cases. We see that quite a bit. There's a direct correlation between disengagement and employee issues, active counselings, et cetera. And then when we layer on top of that the data we're getting from our growth on purpose assessment, we're finding that 67% of teams within the organizations don't work together effectively to solve problems. And in fact, what they do instead is they spend more time creating problems than solving problems. So rather than coming together to attack a common enemy, like a competitor that has surged or some sort of overly bureaucratic process, instead they're creating drama. That's where silos form. And the other thing that we're finding is that 65% of employees in these organizations don't have access to either coaching or mentoring programs. So you've got rising talent hidden in your organization, and they don't feel like they've got anywhere to take that raw potential. And so again, it's a missed opportunity. So it's really important in this pillar that we give employees the space to break things. And we don't mean breaking walls, but it's really about helping employees take smart risks. Almost every organization I've ever seen, when they do a job posting, they advertise for people with entrepreneurial spirit. And then the very first time they color outside of the line, once they're in the organization, they get smacked back. So when your talent value proposition doesn't match up with the culture that actually exists in your organization, people are going to believe what they see, not what you tell them. So it's really important here, if you don't have a working environment that not only tolerates but rewards failing forward, that not only advertises for people with entrepreneurial spirit, but incentivizes people for taking smart risks, for breaking down silos, and for doing things in a more innovative way, that disconnect is what drives talent out. But before they go out, they wreak havoc on their way. So it's really important to give people that space to take risks, to fail forward, to learn from their mistakes, and to solve bigger problems. This is an agenda from a leadership summit that we typically run for our clients, where they'll bring us in to facilitate a strategic planning session. But what we always insist on doing first, especially with newly formed teams, is say you can't just jump to day 2 on an agenda like this. You can't just expect people to come together and to drop their turf wars and to bring down the walls of their silos and get together and form cohesively if you don't spend time helping them understand each other first. These are some questions that you can start to integrate again into your existing conversations to help to strengthen this acceleration pillar and to help people think differently, to start to even smash and break the traditional ways that they approach problems, that they approach their role. So asking them, what's the biggest challenge they face in their role right now? What's one thing that would make their job easier? That is one of the most powerful questions you can ask employees as you walk around, as you interact one-on-one, as you sit in on team meetings. It's not about teeing them up to say, well, more money wouldn't hurt. It's really about saying, how can we simplify what we need you to do anyway, so you get more enjoyment out of it, you become more productive, and you feel more fulfilled. A couple of other questions here. What's one role in the company you're curious to learn more about? This helps them to lean in to the other areas of your company and starts to break down this us versus them mentality, which we see far too often. And then this other one also does that. Who's one person on a different team you'd love the chance to work with more closely? We work with organizations and rising leaders all the time. And a lot of them are quick to say to us, my team functions great. It's that other team that's dysfunctional, right? And so we start to work with them on how can you lead better horizontally, so that you're not just worried about achieving your own vertical goals, because that's only going to take you so far. There is a ceiling on vertical progress if you don't figure out how to, cooperate and lead and communicate horizontally. So that brings us to the fourth pillar. Over time, when these first three pillars that we talked about, aspiration, awareness, acceleration, when they're not strong enough and you don't have this fourth pillar in place, all of this culminates in low mobility. This is where you reap the negative effects of not nurturing those first three pillars. Because now when you lose a critical member of your team, you don't have somebody else ready to step in, ready to go with the right skills and the right mindset to make sure that none of the balls are dropped. And this is what happens when you have an environment where your talent's not growing. And again, when you look back at one of the top reasons that people leave an organization is because they don't see a career path. If they're not given a chance to advance, to deepen their impact and to rise in your organization, they're also going to leave. And if you don't get them ready through succession, through having the right talent, through putting them into the right roles, through giving them access to coaching and mentoring, you're going to start to see gaps. And there's a cost to that as well. We know that when you don't have an internal person ready to go to fill a key vacancy, you have to go outside. And we know that external talent is not only 18% more expensive, they're 21% more likely to leave within their first 12 months. So you're just repeating that cycle of losing talent, not having somebody at the ready to fill that role. And then it feeds into all those previous costs that we talk about in terms of time to fill, cost to fill, the dips in productivity and morale when you have a revolving door of leaving talent. And what drives some of this? Well, if we look at our growth on purpose assessment, we see that 86% of companies lack a mechanism for making decisions consistently that support and facilitate their long-term strategy. And we also see that 55% of employees don't see a clear connection between the role that you are paying them to fill and how that connects to the company's mission. And if we can't, as leaders, make that visible, tangible connection for every single employee on our team, regardless of what we're paying them to do, they're not going to give you their best effort. They're not going to come up with an innovative, out-of-the-box idea that you weren't thinking of. So it's really important to make those powerful connections for everyone on your team. And so again, that's why we've got to strengthen this alignment pillar. We've got to give employees a future that they can see, that they can be part of, that they're enthusiastic about building and leaning into. And it should answer this question of why they should not only stay, but grow both their own careers, because you're showing them clear career paths, and your company when they work together. This is our decision dashboard. A lot of our clients call this a game changer. It's a one-page view that enables you to capture where it is you're trying to head long term, what are the fundamental strengths and attributes you need to get there. This is something that we help our clients build, and it really helps guide their tactical decisions, their strategic decisions through the lens of, does this move us closer to our longer term vision? But again, it's not about adding things to your plate. This is about helping you to repurpose what you're already doing and align it better. So here are some great questions that you can ask in the conversations you're already having. When's the last time anyone has asked you, why your role exists, what it is in place to accomplish. Every time I ask that question of a leader that I'm advising, they give me that deer in the headlights look because it's been too long since they checked in on, why am I here? What is the purpose of this role? So asking your employees that as well is super important. I love the phrasing of this next one. What do you get to do in your role that others may not know? And it's a simple word choice, but it's highly intentional because when we shift people's mindset away from this is what I have to do to this is what I get to do, they automatically start to lean in. And then, of course, asking people to think more actively and intentionally about how their individual role contributes to what we are all collectively trying to achieve here is really important. And then in keeping with this notion of giving employees the space to break things down, asking them individually, what's the most cumbersome process you have to get through to get your work done? And what would make that simpler? It's like silos. We don't intentionally create silos, but they form over time and through neglect. These processes don't start out as 40-step processes when 12 will do. They just sort of become this kitchen sink exercise. So it's really important to ask the people that are living closest to those processes, who can't get around them to get their work done, how do we break them down? How do we simplify them? How do we strip out what is not absolutely mission critical? So that's super important too. This brings everything back together onto one page. It's really important, if you remember nothing else, to understand that when you seed your business with the right talent and you nurture them through the 4 pillars, aspiration, awareness, acceleration, alignment, so that you fulfill these 4 fundamental needs, over time, you build an organizational culture that can perform under pressure and grow on purpose. Of those 4 pillars, aspiration, awareness, acceleration, alignment, which one feels like the biggest struggle right now, or the one that feels most urgent for you to strengthen? Here's what I would love for you to do. These are 3 easy, quick wins that you can take. The first one is take 5 minutes, go to growthonpurpose.com/assessment. It takes literally 5 minutes. You will instantly get a report of recommendations that are customized to your unique situation. So highly recommend that. I've been sharing along the way some really powerful questions that you can start to integrate into conversations you're already having. Because again, the first step should be the simplest one to help you start to build momentum. So don't feel like you've got to reinvent the wheel and start adding a whole bunch of meetings to your calendar. Use the conversations, even the hallway chats that you're already having, and start sprinkling in some of these questions. In particular, the ones that align to the pillar that is the key pain point for you right now. And I promise you, you already have a lot of data within your team that you can start to act upon. And then the third one is, yes, I do want you to add a meeting to your calendar, which is a real quick one, a 15-minute one with me. You can go to growthonpurpose.com/chat, and we'll have 15 minutes together completely free, not a sales call. I will help you get unstuck and motivated toward taking your next step. And then if you want to go deeper, there are a couple of resources here that I invite you to check out. One is the podcast series that I am doing in partnership with these fine folks at People Forward Network. And you can go tune into that at growthonpurpose.com/podcast. And then my book, Growth on Purpose, goes way deeper on the 4 pillars. And you can check that out at growthonpurpose.com. But as I said, please email me if you would like any or all of the resources that I shared, whether it's the message map, the succession plan, the leadership retreat agenda, the decision dashboard. Please don't be shy. Reach out, even just to say hello. I'd love to connect with you on a deeper level. I appreciate you investing the time. Again, email me if you'd like to learn more. Take advantage of these resources and look forward to connecting with you